Good evening, everyone, all the students. And today we are gathered here in this session for the talk on how to build up or how to plan for your own startup. What are the various steps? And for that, we have with us Monica Suri ma'am and Garima Vadhava ma'am, experts for the topic. And it is a very useful session because you are all of you are from IPD courses. So I request all to listen this session carefully, and it is an opportunity to clear all your doubts that you have asked us in the classes also. So now I would like to welcome Monica ma'am. Let's begin. I hand over the dais or the mic to you.
Yes, but first, I think, Ekta, you have not introduced them, properly. Rather than the names, I would like to say they are experts in legal matters and are from Amity Law School. So whatever legal requirements are there for a startup, I think they will be the best person in the university to tell you all about it. So now I think you can start, Monica ma'am and Garima ma'am.
Thank you so much for that. I'm really humbled and thank you so much for that introduction. So very good evening to everyone, to the organizers and all of us, all the students especially present here. How we'll be going about for the session is, since the topic is about for a startup, what are the important issues, legal as well as legal, ethical, and how do we go about it? And this topic is especially important because of the time we are passing through right now, the post-pandemic time. How do we build up on the startups? What are the legal hassles we all are facing? My endeavor would be, I would be covering, since there is a paucity of time and we would have a time constraint, I would be covering the initial part relating to the legal aspects, covering the company law, where you're likely to face initial hitches in getting the registration, how to approach and how to go about registering your respective startup or your organization, along with most important, and the one that is ever taxing is the GST, taxation aspect of registration for the startups. My colleague, Ms. Garima Vadhva, also will take you through the ethical as well as certain legal aspects on whatever we discuss. So she would be talking on more practical and how it's there in the market today. So just give me a minute, please. I'll just share the screen. So the slide is well visible, I hope, and this is how I'll take you through. This is what we just stated. It is planning for a startup, legal and ethical steps. We move forward. How do we go about what I just stated? When we talk of a startup, there are multifacets, especially the taxation and the legal aspects. So one is from the company law perspective, GST. We have several MSME and labor law as well. So I'll take you through the company law and the GST, the most important, likely, which is to give a problem at the time when you go in for the incorporation. Now, the Companies Act, the new Companies Act that we have came in 2013. Prior to that, we had a Companies Act which was 60 years old, which was Companies Act 1956. So now we have a new act way back in 2013, which is Companies Act 2013. Now, this has given birth to certain different types of legal entities, which was not there earlier when we had the Companies Act of 1956. What you can see on your screen, especially this part relating to the OPC, which is called as one-person company, and this has come up after the 2013 Act. So I would advise any of you having interest, initially we all face a lot of constraints in startups, financial to HR to team and all those. OPC is one-person company and which is broadly about one director, and it meets the minimum requirement, the constraints that one is generally faced with. So my suggestion to those of you who have a strong idea, who feel the niche that yes, this is the point where you're sure about your business plan, or maybe about the business idea. I won't say business plan because likely we are to face hitches. OPC is the point where you could start up, and later, of course, you can always convert it to any of the other entities, private limited, public limited, as in how you get more of the available resources, more finance, more HR, and so on. So I'll quickly take you through what a OPC is, the basic framework. OPC is one person company. How many number of directors are needed to start? One director. The name itself suggests that. So the one director is needed, and as per the new Companies Act provisions, you need maximum directors that you can have in a company is 15. You can increase it by a resolution, but otherwise 15. So this is one suggestion I have to all of us present here. When you go in for mooting, when you are going in for registration of a company, minimum one director for something like a OPC, but maximum you cannot increase the bandwidth beyond 15 unless there is your organization or your startup is meeting some turnover requirements of law, then you may be permitted to increase it still up to 20. But this is one part. What is the minimum capital required? 1 lakh. So a nice startup, you have some idea where you feel you have the niche and it can be worked out. This is my first suggestion, work it out towards OPC. The second part is related to private or public limited companies. Now, what is this private or public limited companies we have? We've heard of it so many. Let's pick up some live examples. Muthoot Leasing is a big name today. But when they started as a sole proprietorship. Later, they went on to building it up in a finance, and it's a private limited company. They're a huge giant, but it reads as private limited. So these are few things that we have where you can start from a small minimum constraints and then build it up gradually. So private limited requires how many members or how many directors? 2 directors. And there is a requirement of also having some members implying whatever business you'll plan out. Like I remember one of the sessions I was taking here, and there were some students, if I rightly recall, somewhere from biotechnology, and they came up with a beautiful idea, very innovative. And that student, this was about a couple of years back, and he got an idea that they wanted to have a startup for something. It was relating to one of the ailments, and they said probably this could have a better progression. So he came up with the idea that they want to start as a private limited, just 2 friends in the same batch. And then thereafter, when I gradually, I was counseling him as to what he was doing. So they started with a private limited, and then gradually they went on to making it a LLP. LLP is another format of registering on a larger level. So private limited requires lesser constraints, 2 minimum directors, but it requires 200 members as well. This is one problem we face in law. Sometimes you're not able to show that 200 members are there in your private limited company, but still it is sometimes workable in case your business plan is strong enough. Then we have the next one is when you talk about there is a minimum requirement of 1 lakh as the moot capital for private limited company. This is now being done away with the recent changes. The last point talks about 1 lakh minimum capital, but this is again now going through a change. So probably it will give you a little respite when it comes down to the financial part. Public limited company, what you can see alternatively to private limited, it requires minimum 3 directors. Maximum 15, what we just stated. Always remember it as a point on your fingertips that if you're going in for setting up a startup, what is the maximum number of directors the company law is permitting? It's 15. Subject to certain approvals where I can extend beyond if the permission is granted. Public limited, 3 directors and maximum 15, the same. What is the amount of share capital, the moot capital, or what we call as the authorized capital, which should be there? It's 5 lakhs. Now that is also going through a change. I may not be required to have that because we are passing through a time post-pandemic where the government wants a lot of entrepreneurship and innovation to come up. So where will it come from? It's just going to come from you and me, the ideas. Whatever ideas you have, it's just a way of making your own, going ahead with your project. So they're trying to reduce the impediments so that best of the minds and the best of the brains can bring about some good idea. So this is what it is, the private limited and public limited. So my suggestion is, if your startup is niche enough, you feel that it's doing relatively well, or probably in about 6 months, there is no exit strategy. There is you are about to, let's say in 2 years, your forecasting, your financials does say that you might reach break even. And if you're going on a smooth road, my suggestion would be, from private limited, convert your company to a public limited, which is which will give you a little cushion to invite public share. Like, I'll give you the example. You all may be aware of Faguni Nair, the Nika. She's one person now who's taken India on the global map with the kind of brain and the mindset she had. And just imagine, from a product, there's just a small innovation in that product of Nika, and how she's built it up. And today, the IPO was also so super subscribed. So public limited is always a desirable option when you have to, when your company is eased out for a better financial, it'll give you more financial ease. And at the same time, also a little bit of, the team part or the HR. So broadly, from all aspects, it may please. Now, I have a question to all of you just before I take you forward to the other part. Any one of you would just like to ask on? Where I just said that in company law, we have 15 as the upper limit for maximum number of directors. Now, in a public limited company, I was, I was just working out, doing a project, reading out one, and I came across a point. I thought, let me just ask all the students as well. So in a public limited company, now the law permits that you can have maximum 15 directors. This is what we just learned. So if supposedly your startup tomorrow, you have 2 directors are needed, 3 directors is fine. So since 15 is the upper limit, as entrepreneurs tomorrow, or if you have to, what would you prefer? You would like to have all 15 directors, or 12, 13, 14, 15 directors, or you think a thin board, maybe of just 5 to 6 directors, would give a better edge to your startup? Anyone, any thought on that? Is it desirable to have a thin board with lesser number of directors, or what the law is permitting all the directors, let's say 14 to 15 directors on the board? How will which would be a better proposition? Any one of us, give it a try. Even if it's wrong, doesn't matter. We are in a closed forum just to learn here.
Ma'am, please repeat the question once.
Yeah.
Ma'am, lesser number of directors. Lesser number of directors are there.
Yeah. What is desirable tomorrow when you have a company, you open up a startup? What is desirable? Is it desirable to have a thin board with few directors, let's say 4 to 5, or we should have larger, long, a huge number of directors, let's say 14 or 15, what the law is permitting? What will help an organization?
Ma'am, small.
Ma'am, we should have a thin board.
Yeah,
Sorry,
thin board.
And less contradictions. Less contradictions.
Absolutely. All right. Most important is less complications and most difficult process. In fact, this is one thing I would suggest. If any one of you have a project, write up, and even as budding entrepreneurs, is a decision making. Decision making is always a complex process at any stage. So here as well, if you have what she rightly said, larger number of directors, to aap to apna resolution aapka will keep floating. You'll not be able to take any decision. So it's always desirable to have a thin board where the directors can promptly pass the resolution or take the decision. Because law is, there's a process, what you call as passing a special resolution or ordinary resolution. There, it's a very difficult process of passing. So it's always desirable from the decision-making point of view to have a thin board instead of a thick board. All right, so this is one part, public limited, private limited. Public limited, when you have a huge base of resources. Next, this one is called as a Section 8 company. Iska naam hi Section 8 company hai as it goes on the as it reads in law. Earlier, this used to be when we had an old act, it used to be called a Section 25 Act, 25 company. Section 8 company is basically about how do you, what kind of a company do you want in case you have some charitable purposes. Like the time we have now, there were about 10,000 Section 8 companies just in about a period of 6 to 7 months. It has charitable purpose, social purpose, religious purpose, all this CSR and all those social activities that were done during this lockdown and during this pandemic time. How did it come up? It came up a lot through the Section 8 companies. Objective was social. People wanted to do good, get out of the time we all were passing through. So this was what was required. So Section 8 company, what is the requirement of law? There is a form that you have to file. It's called as Form Inc. 1. I'll give you the name of the website where you have to register. It's all a cakework now. It's very simple to register a company. The form is called as Inc. 1. Inc. is Incorporation. So short form, they've given it as Inc. And Inc. 1 starting for getting your name availability. And then thereafter, once you go through the process of incorporation, get the name availability, you file, there is another form. The list of the form is also given on that portal. It's called as RD1, which is Regional Directorate 1 form. Once you file that, you get a license, and then thereafter Section 8 company can be incorporated. So this is about what Section 8 company is. Those of you, anyone has some idea that you feel that 1 year from now, even post-pandemic is not an easy time for us to fight. So if you feel that you have some project where you can rebuild your own nation, this is what you should look in for. Section 8 company, where you feel, because we are now growing, the opportunities are more. The time is to grab that opportunity. So this is my one suggestion. You could, think of Section 8 company coupled with some point where you have social charitable purpose. The more good we'll do to the society, the more our nation will progress. So this is one part I leave you to think. Now, this is what is the incorporation process? Incorporation process is 4 times. I'm giving you the name of the portal as well. It's called as www.mca.gov.in. I'll just be, sending it across. Now, once you log in into that portal, today, even as a layman, you can learn the process of incorporation. So when you have startup, you're investing all your resources, you are taking the financial burden. So you should have an idea as to what the incorporation is going to be about. This is what it is. So 4 stages where I can register my organization. How is it? The first is I have to obtain, when you have the process of your report is ready, your feasibility report is ready, you're all set to enter. So what is your first thing? You have to apply for DIN and DSC. DIN ka kya matlab hai? Directors Identification Number. The minute you have a startup, you are in public domain. So public domain mein hai, and you want to work for and of the society, you are accountable to the society as well. So therefore, the first thing is the Director's Identification Number. This again is there on the portal. The number is issued within about, after all the cross checks and the forms are filed on that portal, it takes about 1 week to get the DIN. DSC is the digital signatures, which is mandatory whenever you have to file your returns and other correspondence. So this is the first stage. Second is name availability. What is name availability? I have, earlier, we used to have Form Inc. 1 to Inc. 22, they used to go. There were multiple forms. This is 7-8 months back I'm talking about. So what you can read on my slides is Inc. 1, Inc. 2, Inc. 7. All these forms are now substituted with one single format of form, which is called as SPICE Plus. SPICE implies Specified Performer for Incorporation. So that has eased out the work of any startup, any entrepreneur. So the minute you go to the portal, you fill in your PAN, TAN, SIN, and then thereafter you can log in and in that Spice Plus form and start with the name availability. This takes generally about 72 hours to roughly about a week. Once your name availability is given, then you start the incorporation process. Incorporation process is, again, it starts from simplified version of the same Spice form. Plus, they ask you to submit your memorandum. There's a complete list of the documents. You have a memorandum, memorandum, articles of association, coupled with director's consent. You need directors, we just spoke about, so director's consent, the forms relating to the director's consent, memorandum of understanding, then there is preliminary contracts, there's also power of attorney. So all those have to be substantiated. So all these are filed, and along with there is one paper book, so that has to be collectively filed together. And with that, all these are refiled with the ministry, which is Ministry of Corporate Affairs. The representative of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs is called as ROC, Registrar of Companies, very formally spoken about. My suggestion also to all the students here is when you are thinking about a startup, see, this is a theoretical aspect, but the best way to learn and understand it, especially at your stage and age, is read and analyze as to what the financial news is talking about. That any of those papers, Economic Times or Financial Express, just that part of the editorial, even if you give it about 10 to 15 minutes every day of reading, you'll become an expert in handling your legal issues and taxation related issues yourself. So this is one homework I'll leave you with, that read the editorial pages just for 10-15 minutes daily. That will also suffice. That talks a lot about this process as well. So once in the incorporation stage, all the documents and the forms are submitted, the ministry reverts back again within about 21 days, or maybe earlier in case there is no objection. And then thereafter you get certificate of incorporation. Certificate of incorporation means the day your company is born. That's called as a certificate of incorporation. If you're a private limited company we just spoke about, you stop, you can now go ahead with the company process. But in case you are a public limited company, you have to go through this stage, the last stage, what we are talking, commencement stage, which implies that you have to get a certificate of commencement of business, which is after 6 months of incorporation. So this is the 4 stages of incorporation process, what you'll find on the portal where you have to register. I have given the name. I'll either ways just display it so that you're clear. mca.gov.in, where you have to log in. All answers to the question, to the problems likely you are to face is given in a very, very user-friendly way there. You get stuck up, you can come back to us anytime, but this is what the gist is. I'll just take you last couple of minutes to the, before I hand it over to my colleague, this part, which again you're likely to face, is GST registration and how do you go about it. Now GST registration, we'll just try and understand it through this chart. So I'll just enhance it so that you can see it. What is the process or procedure of registration? Now you have set up a startup. Now likely you'll start your activities either within the state or outside the state. So this is what this chart is saying. If you can just see it clearly, it is the GST applicability and 2, intrastate sale, let me enhance it more, intrastate business activity or interstate business activity. We got it? So when it is intrastate business activity means, let's say you and I, we are in UP, you want to start a business activity or startup is just within the state. So you fall in this category. If you are in this category, when do you require a GST registration? If your turnover crosses 20 lakhs, up to 20 lakhs. This is what the GST Council pronounced. So that means if it is less than 20 lakhs, you still haven't reached that threshold limit. The registration is not mandatory, though desirable, but not mandatory. Now, what does the second aspect says? If you, it's little blurred. So what it reads is that rupees 20 lakhs to 75 lakhs, your registration, I'll just read it out for you. The registration can be done through two ways. One is called as the composition scheme, and the other is called as the normal scheme. Normal scheme, composition scheme is GST has, a lot of paperwork. In 1 month, you have to file about 3 to 4 returns. So that's made it a little mundane. So in case you go in for a composition scheme, you pay, it's some turnover based and extra payment based, but your taxation slab reduces, and simultaneously also your return is only about once in 6 months. So it brings down your compliance is relatively less. So this is composition scheme, and otherwise normal scheme, you can register yourself if your turnover is between 20 to 75 lakhs. The third category is what you can see here is it says if your turnover is above 75 lakhs. So that means, or if you are doing interstate sales, see all the three arrows pointing towards this picture, normal scheme, turnover above 75, or the interstate sales. What it says is that in case you are doing interstate, means आप यूपी में है, यूपी से आप चेन्नई, you are sending goods, or your turnover is crossed 75 lakhs, or under normal scheme, you have to do a mandatory registration, which is through the portal. So the GSTIN number is issued to you, and this registration is online through the gst.gov.in, the portal that is there in CBIT, and that is how you go on to register. I'll be sending you the links for both these, the MCA as well as GSTIN, and that is what it implies. All right, that is all from my side, the basic legal framework, the basic minimum that is required. And anyone, any question, we'll just take it forward later. And over to you, Garima, now to my colleague who will take you forward with the rest of the presentation. Garima, the audio is not clear. No, not yet. Yeah, now it was better. Yeah, now it's better.
Everybody, thank you very much for giving this platform. And so Monica ma'am just very nicely briefed everybody on the legal aspects. She gave you a little overview of the various kind of legal structures required, what are the options that we have, and what are the advantages. And I think most importantly, when she briefed you about GST, it is very, very important practical part of running the enterprise today. What I will be taking you through, the second part of the session, would be the ethical considerations for a startup, and what are the various dilemmas that a startup faces today, and how to go about dealing with it. So it's going to be a quick, brief overview of all the dilemmas or the considerations or the issues or the steps that ideally a startup should bear in mind at this point in time. So give me a second. I'm just going to share my slides and start with the presentation. All right. We have heard this term a number of times, the word ethics. And I think right from the time we have been in school, right from the time we have been a part of the family social setup, we have been hearing this word. So where does it actually originate from? So the word is derived from a Greek word called as ethos, which means a set of moral principles. Morality or ethics represent a code of conduct that governs how people treat each other. And it is very, very important now that being a part of a community, being a part of society that a startup is going to be, it's important that they maintain the ethical standards of their working. In a sense, it is concerned with the people way or the way people act or behave. The term ethics usually refers to the moral principles writing conduct which are held by a group or even a profession. So today, I think ethics is something which it encompasses anything and everything that a business has to take into consideration. So we're going to discuss the various aspects on how ethically as a startup can we take into consideration various aspects in the organization. So it is a very, very broad field. Usually when we talk about the term ethics, people associate with the concept of CSR. Anybody knows what does the term CSR mean? Anybody? What does the term CSR mean? So the term, anybody would want to try for this? All right, the term CSR is a very, very popular. Ma'am, in fact, talked about one of the types of companies through which CSR activities can be conducted. So CSR is corporate social responsibility. Usually when we associate the term business ethics, people think you're talking about the social responsibility of the business. The corporate social responsibility is just one aspect that ethical business has to take into consideration. Basically, it is obligation towards a lot of party, a lot of stakeholders, be it employees, be it customers, be it suppliers, be it competitors, and be it a general public as a whole. So now, usually founders or people who are working with startups usually think that, we are too small to talk about big things like ethics. We are too tiny a setup. But I think it's very important that right at the very fundamental level, from very beginning, if we understand that the ethical way or the right way or a conscious way of doing business is going to give us something called a sustainability in future. Because as the awareness is increasing, as information with the people is increasing, they are very much looking upon business practices which are ethical in nature, which are maintaining those standards. They are like a building block. So right from the very X that we start, from A to X that we do in a startup, it's important to do it in an ethical way. So let's see what are the various broad aspects which can be covered when we talk about so-called the ethical issues. I think right from fulfilling the compliances, ethical considerations with people management, the people that we hire, the people we are dealing with, the people who can be our consumers, it can be society at large, ethical considerations in marketing of our products and advertisement of the products, our duty as a whole towards community. And here, when we talk about the concept called as the corporate social responsibility, we're going to discuss all of these in detail. By not entertaining or being a part or supporting or unknowingly being a part of the fraud and the manipulation of whether it is through a direct means of knowingly entering into it or through, even doing auditing or, malpractices and maintaining the books of accounts, manipulation, window dressing. A very, very important issue these days is what we call as data protection and privacy. So maintaining ethical standards of how and what you're doing with consumer-based data, and have you taken the approvals? Have you clarified the process is very important. Duty towards the customer, what quality, what you're claiming is what you're giving, what is it that you're trying to advertise, is it actually the right thing or not, and duty towards the environment. Again, all of these can be considered broadly as the major ethical issues that need to be considered. I'll first come to the ethical consideration in people management, because ultimately, if you see any startup, any successful venture, whether you see something like a Google, a Facebook, a Myntra, a Paytm, or a Nykaa, it is eventually the people and the team, the founders had an idea, then the team came up, and then today it has become a big brand. Today they are known. But underlying people who are it is the people who work in it. So consideration for people would be the first ethical practice or the first ethical standards that can be set up by a startup. So whether it is with respect to the minimum wages that they need to work on, or employee compensation act, employee compensation act majorly talks about in case if there is any kind of a mishappening of an employer job, how will you take care of that? Payment of wages regularly, payment of wages as per what has been signed in the contract, giving them provident fund if you have more than 6 employees. So you go on to that area. Equal Remuneration Act. So it's a move towards inclusiveness. We still see a lot of places of differences in wages between gender. or glass cleaning, because of which gender roles are not given important considerations even today. So, breaking them off, Maternity Benefit Act, and ensuring that it is given the way the government has defined it. Promoting and encouraging diversity at workplaces. Today, you will see and go to any startups or any famous website or any brand website, you will see them talking a lot about inclusion, including diversity, because they understand that without considering these aspects as a part of business, it's very, very difficult to sustain in the future now. So I was reading an article which has been published by Forbes, and it took a viewpoint of about 12 business magnates and the startups that they had worked on. And I picked up a few of them, and it talks about that what should you actually do to create so-called an ethical setup. So I picked up like few of them from there, and the first one said very nicely said that the very basic thing is to define your core values clearly, that who you are and what is your belief system as a brand, as a startup. So I took up Nike's example, and it says that we admire the worth of every woman. We believe that Nike women deserve nothing but the purest, authentic beauty and wellness products money can buy. And then they claim that we do not source. And how are you saying that? They say that we do not source anything from the gray market, um, or and we our products are sourced directly from the authorized distributors. Um, so, this is how you inculcate values right at the beginning of what you are trying to do. How clear and clean you're keeping your systems, how clear and clean you're keeping things basic, like how your procurement process will define ethical standards in your business. Integrate ethics when you're hiring. So what are the basic standards you're keeping? Are you discriminating in the wages? Are you discriminating in the policy of hiring? Are you discriminating in the policy of the benefits or the growth? So keep that equal, keep that as open as possible. Very importantly, in a startup, it's initially 4 or 5 people who work as a core team. So as your company expands or grows, it's very important that the core people or people who are working in and out into various domains, they sit together and they brainstorm what should be the value system and the ethical standards, because it cannot be a very, very autocratic setup wherein the founder says, okay, these are the values. It's important to relate to the values. It's important to believe in that values. And that will come only and only when people have sat together, when they have believed and worked out together and charted out as to what is it that they would want to do. Craft values that each employee can own, and that can again happen only when they have sat together and done that. Most importantly, demonstrate using an example. So how you treat, how you behave, how you manage a team is what you are telling everybody in the organization to do the same, to replicate the same, right? And if I tell you about, can anybody guess which company, which one company amongst the lot who have been branded as one of the most ethical companies, and they have been listed amongst, they have come in the list of the top most ethical companies in the world. So we have 2, 3 Indian companies also. Can somebody guess which would be the major parent brand whose companies would be there as a part of the most ethical companies in the world? Very, very renowned brand, very, very old parent brand in the country, considered to be extremely ethical. Anybody would like to guess?
Tata.
Yes. So yes, Tata Steel, Tata carries so much of high level of integrity and ethical standards and in performing their tasks, that if you talk about their international image, international brand image, the culture that they have and experience of global experience of different parties dealing with them, they have immense respect in the eyes of corporates around the world. So how have they created that? I think that has come from completely the ethical standards they have kept when they are dealing. They have come from the core values that they have always stuck to, and that is something because of which people believe in them, that no, if it's Tata, it is going to have some standard. It is, if they're claiming something, they are actually doing that. So that immense respect. That's the kind of respect Ratan Tata has, that because that's how
Again, advertisement is one other area where ethical standards need to be maintained. So we see during a lot of matches, a lot of guerrilla advertisements going on. You see during cricket matches, there is the main sponsor brand who's been spending a lot of money, and then we see around where the cricket ground ends towards where the general public starts sitting, we see hoardings of different brands sitting. Or main sponsor is somebody else, and maybe the jersey for 5 minutes being worn by the top players of some other brand. So these kind of practices are not considered very healthy in the industry. These kind of practices wherein you either put yourself above somebody else or you pull down somebody else are not considered very healthy practices in the industry. So the way you advertise your product and maybe even claim something around your product or demonstrate something around the product, which may not be true, again, is a very unethical way of putting things down. Also, advertising things which have been prohibited as per any countries and that they need to be considered. I will show you an example of one ad wherein we are talking about the way they have done a very nice and they maintain a very nice ethical standard of how an ad should be, wherein they are not just claiming that we are the best. They are putting forth the concept that they want to educate people on, and they're trying to say that the concept is important, the idea is important. You choose any brand, but this idea of hygiene is important. Just give me a second, I'll share this one ad with you.
Any glitch, Garima?
Yeah, I think there is some trouble. I'm not able to connect it to YouTube. Just give me a second. But anyway, some problem connected. Maybe I'll try again once. Closing down. So all right. So this ad simply talked about Lifebuoy, how they were trying to create an awareness about why washing hands is important. This came during COVID, and they talked about the entire their own concept, their own brand, how this is very important. And at the end, when they were closing, they said it's important to wash hands. You may choose any brand, but please wash hands. So this was such a beautiful portrayal of how healthy advertisement looks like, which is not just saying me and I am the best and that rest everything is not so good. So they took up a cause and they said that no, importance is washing hands. That gave them a lot of respect in the community. That wow, it's not just about me as a brand. It's very important about washing hands and hygiene and how it can help each of us together. So yes, advertisement ethical considerations are very. Again, ma'am already talked about very important compliance called as GST. So ethical aspects would also involve you following a lot of compliances and fulfilling compliances, whether it is your GST registration or if you're required to take FSSI. If you're in the food business, you need this licensing, import, export, for Udyog Aadhaar registration, your fire permits and safety registration, your infrastructure clearances, your water clearances, if you're industry or specific startup requires that. And again, coming down to very most basic filing of your taxes and maintaining the books as well. Again, very basic, but very, very important. Ethics is not very, very fancy name, which you also to do some, pick up a cause and start working on a big cause. It starts from the enterprise. It starts from the organization as a whole. So treat your employees well, treat your customers well, claim what you are doing and doing what you are claiming, maintain your accounts, maintain your compliance. These are the basic steps, very, very essential to actually work on the practical way towards so-called compliance, ethical standards. And then once you're doing within the organization these steps well, then it's the time to step out and hold other hands. Holding hands before we are, punching on things inside does not really help. A very important thing in today's ethical aspects is your data protection and the privacy. Online, like practically everything we could do online. A lot of data was getting exchanged, and thus a lot of manipulation of data happened, misusage of data happened, and thus today again, as per the it's very important that the data privacy needs to be maintained. The startups who are using data while they're registering or delivering or submitting or asking or inquiring, they need to have a clear data protection or the privacy policy arrangement and agreement. The consumers should be aware about it. There needs to be a proper permission required in case their data is to be used somewhere or whatever they're going to be doing with the data that needs to be clearly defined. Again, a very important step towards maintaining ethical standards in startup today. Protection of intellectual property rights. Intellectual property rights contain things like your patents, your copyrights, your geographical marks, your trademark, your registration marks. So fudging on using somebody's very similar name, like we see Puma and a lot of T-shirts with different opposite sign with Puma, or Nike's swoosh sign being used in different direction, or McDonald's name being used by McDowell's. These may create, they do not reflect one functionality of the brand. They do not reflect who you are essentially, and keeps a very, very poor image in the eyes of the consumer. So I think violation can even lead to law-related trouble. So these things need to be taken care of. Because brands are very, very, very cautious now that their name should not be misused, and they will not step behind. And even if they have to go to the courts to fight for what their trademarks are or what their copyrights are, because everybody, the consumers affiliate brand with those taglines or images, and so it's very important to ensure that if you are following ethical standards, you do not do that. You are not copying somebody else's processes blindly and claiming it to be yours. I'll just show you one basic example that how people today are creating kiosks or something that even is there. So a general public, somebody did not like Myntra's logo. They felt it was a humiliation to women. It was a very, very cheap interpretation of women. So they filed a suit against it, and Myntra had to change the logo, their design of how they were writing M. So anybody can have an issue against it. So you need to be very, very cautious of not hurting anybody's sentiments directly or indirectly when we are doing things like this. Here we have one McDonald's registered trademark, and here we have a copy McDonald's. Automatically does not create very good impression in the mind of the consumer that it's a basic trademark, and if you cannot even create your own general trademark, it's a question mark. So these things really impact a person's mind of these things. So I'll just brief you on this last point before I end. knowingly or unknowingly, not entering any kind of fraud and manipulation, not being a part of fraud and manipulation. So this particular example is post 2014 when the Made in India campaign got launched by the Prime Minister. The Startup India campaign got launched. In 2016, a Noida-based firm named Winking Bells announced the launch of a smartphone named Freedom 251 at very, very low cost of 451 rupees with a logo which was very, very similar to the Made in India campaign logo, right? And came up with an advertisement on the front page of the several local newspapers, which consisted of India's tricolor flag, and later on the company ended up really as a scam. So misrepresenting something which in a product category was not meant for that, and manipulating people or working out in such a way that it is not in the interest of people and scamming them and undertaking a fraud again is a very, very unethical practice. So these aspects need to be considered whenever startups are working around their own selves. So as I said, it is not going outside first and doing things in ethical ways. It is starts right from what is it that you want to do, how you want to do, who will be doing it, and then moving around it. So yeah, that's it. That's it from my side with respect to overall broad category of what are the ethical issues surrounding starting up of a business, what are the dilemmas, and how should you go about and be little careful with respect to the business ethics part that a startup should take care of. Any questions to me or Monica ma'am?
Yes, please.
Students,
So I
please.
think we are through with the presentation, Ekta ma'am. Any one of us having any question could please address it to either of us.
Yes, yes, it will be a very great opportunity. Students, please grab the opportunity, ask your questions, especially those who are from ATSTP students. You might have certain queries. Please raise your hand and ask your questions. Anyone? I'm amazed.
All right, in case anyone is not having any question, also we leave our IDs and phone number. Any one of you can access us anytime, mail to us, any question you have, you're more than welcome.
I think that's a good idea. We'll be sharing our email IDs and we're here in Amity Law School and we're very much.
Ma'am, it would be great actually. It would be great because a few students are engaged with AYF, which is going on. And a few of them might have, because I'm continuously receiving messages on my WhatsApp group that they are unable to communicate because of some issue with the mic or internet maybe. So I will share
Anytime,
your
anytime.
I will
Anytime,
share your
please.
mail IDs with the students. Then thank you so much, ma'am. It was very informative for me also. I also don't know many of the facts because of not that field. So thank you once again that you came. Yes, Anisha, you have some question? No, that was my mistaken. Thank you so much, ma'am, that you came and delivered such informative and such a good session on the important topic on such a short notice. So thank you so much for that, and we all are very grateful to both of you, Garima ma'am and Monica ma'am.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending. So, ma'am, if things are fine, then with your permission, can we finish the meeting?
It's all. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.